Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Corrupt Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1988 biblical drama movie titled The Last Temptation of Christ. Now, The Last Temptation of Christ runs for 2 hours and 44 minutes long. It is directed by Martin Scorsese. It is produced by Barbara DeFina and Harry Oliphant. The script was done by Paul Schrader with some minor rewrites from Martin Scorsese and Jay Cox, based on the novel The Last Temptation of Christ by Nikos Kazantzakis. The score was done by Peter Gabriel, the cinematography by Michael Ballhaus, and the editing was done by Thelma Schoonmaker. And the stars of the movie are Willem Dafoe, Harvey Keitel, Barbara Hershey, Harry Dean Stanton, and David Bowie. It's been well over 2.5 decades since this classic film, directed by Martin Scorsese, came out, and what a following it had. It had, and not always for the better, I might add. Not that I had anything negative to say about it, but it did cause an uproarious impact to overzealous religious fanatics who thought the film was blasphemous and an insult to the Bible, let alone God's beloved Son, Jesus Christ. And even after so many years, one has to wonder why? What was the reason for any kind of outrage? If you wanted any kind of outrage from anything, Mel Gibson was the one who blasted the Bible and all the teachings just because he was on some kind of a crusade to spread off, to openly spread out his anti-Semitic ways. Martin Scorsese never did that. Martin Scorsese was a devoted, loyal Roman Catholic. He would never blast the Bible and all the teachings, or would never make Jesus Christ any more or less than how he's portrayed in the Bible. In fact, this wasn't even based on any of the teachings from the Bible. It was based on a fictional account by a novelist named Nikos Kazantzakis, who also was condemned for his novel. This is what the movie was actually based on. It was based on Kazantzakis' novel, not anything that was taught in the Bible. So I don't understand why people would just go like right off and jump and blast on him. That's ridiculous and totally uncalled for. The reason The Last Temptation of Christ angered the religious community was how Jesus Christ was portrayed. He was depicted not as a patron saint, but as a normal man who conveyed emotions, concerns, fears, doubt, and acceptance for who he was. I mean, we're not expecting to see Jesus Christ, as a guy who's like in the manifestation of a human being, except that he's got a glowing face and a halo above his head. No, he doesn't have that kind of portrayal. And in a way, I find that to be absolutely refreshing. Not derogatory, not blasphemous in any kind of way, shape, or form. It was not actually based on what the novel was about, but more or less on what could have happened had Jesus not sacrificed himself to the cross for the sake of humanity. Not for what did happen, for what might have happened. This was an assumption, not a happenings going on type of thing. He was not trying to ridicule the Bible or anything like that in any way, shape, or form. Mel Gibson did that, not Scorsese. So I would actually suggest, and if people still want to continue to blast Scorsese for this movie, I strongly suggest to you, get a life, and get over it. It was made in 1988. I think 27 years is long enough for you to keep griping at him. Okay? He's a filmmaker, not a crusader. He was depicted. Okay, this story is about as real to the person as any other film that portrayed him and refrained from making Christ look like a storybook character, but a real human being with exceptional talents, with believable emotions. This was an emotionally driven story, not a preaching from the Bible. It never once goes against any message that Christ had preached about through the years. The opening scene, in which Jesus Christ, played by an excellent performance by Willem Dafoe, laying on the ground, looks just like a picture page taken from the Bible. When he awakens, we observe the man is in excruciating pain. During the course of time, he is seen traveling from town to town looking for knowledge, as he remains both enthusiastic and fearful over what God has planned for him. Once nailed to the cross, the devil, who comes into many different manifestations, in this case, he doesn't come across as being some red monster looking creature with horns on his head, or with a pitchfork and an arrow shaped tail and hooves. No, he doesn't come in that kind of manifestation. In fact, I thought it was actually pretty cool that he was not the caricature that you see in cartoons. In fact, the devil himself was actually the manifestation of a little angelic, innocent looking girl, which I actually thought was pretty cool and original and not blasphemous. The devil could be any shape or form he wants. Even the most innocent looking specimen could be the devil. Maybe the devil is among one of us. Maybe the devil is every time we commit acts of evil. Maybe we are our own devils. Ever thought and figured about that? Ever thought of figuring that out? True. So let's see. The devil persuades him to not take the initiative to nail himself to a cross and to live a normal life as a regular, everyday person, married, with kids, and an occupation which he gladly takes in. And he eventually lives a fulfilling life as a mortal, getting old and happy, while counting his last breaths as Jerusalem is in an inferno, or what is said to be maybe possibly an apocalypse. He learns what he did wrong, and once again pleads his father for his wrongdoings, and to return to the cross and to die for everyone's sins. In other words, the religious community was pissed off because of the fact that Jesus Christ was not this guy who epitomized perfection, and that he had flaws, and that he eventually, and there was even scenes where he actually committed the act of romance, and people were also ticked off because of that. And I gotta say, why? This is a fictional story. There is no pages in the Bible that depicts this. We're not going to blast the Bible. There's no need to get all huffy about it. But unfortunately, people in the religious community felt that this was blasphemy. Not in the least. The humanistic plot point is that we get a better understanding of Jesus and why he sacrificed himself for the sake of our humanity. Whether he was a deity or a human is unimportant. The bottom line was that he was a great service to himself and to all of God's creatures, big or small. The primary idiosyncrasy that makes this film more passionate than a certain anti-Semitic Mel Gibson interpretation was that Martin Scorsese and scriptwriter Paul Schrader took the adaptation by Nikos Kazantzakis by detail and refrained from making it big budgeted or grandeur. Though inspired by his predecessors from the 1950s, he took this low-key interpretation and successfully, kindly spoke to the viewers instead of just making this movie feel preachy and self-righteous. One of the primary things that turned people off about this movie was the usage of modernized dialect. Well, hey, guess what? They shouldn't even have been speaking in English. They should have been speaking in Aramaic or some form of Hebrew language. Okay, at least we'll say Mel Gibson did actually do that. But other than that, it was just another anti-Semitic crusade by Gibson. The other one was the obvious New York accent by Harvey Keitel, who played the role of Judas Iscariot. And unfortunately, he was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Supporting Actor, which is unfair because I actually thought he was very, very well in his portrayal of Judas. And he wasn't portrayed as this backstabbing asshole from The Passion of the Christ. No, he was actually played a sympathetic individual who had to eventually tell the Jewish people that Jesus has been made a deal with the devil. He didn't want to. He was reluctant, but for the sake of our humanity and the crumbling foundation of society, he had to do it because he felt it was the right thing to do, not to be just some double-crossing backstabber that was portrayed in Passion of the Christ. And Judas was actually far more sympathetic than that. My guess is that Scorsese just wanted to attract the moviegoers and give them an indicator of what's happening in the scenes. If you wanted realism, the film should have been done in Hebrew with subtitles. If you wanted realism, it was something that The Last Temptation of Christ ticked me off, was the abundance. If there was anything that really went wrong in this movie, was that there was the overabundance of major Hollywood stars. Oh, hey, sure, they put in remarkable performances, but if they're just there to stuff money in their wallets, then that was unexceptional. Dafoe was excellent. Was an excellent choice in the role of Jesus Christ. He got the character down to a T. But when regular Scorsese alums like Harvey Keitel, Harry Dean Stanton, Barbara Hershey, and no disrespect for David Bowie, God rest his soul, playing supporting characters, it actually can be quite jarring. I mean, they didn't really have very much long screen time. So why put them in? Why, just so that we could point out, oh, is that this guy? Oh, is it this lady? There was no need for that. At least Scorsese corrected his mistake when he directed his next religious-based film, Kundun, which was a career best for him. For me, The Last Temptation of Christ is truly right up there with other Scorsese greats like Taxi Driver, Mean Streets, and Raging Bull. The conflicts depicted here are equally poignant in terms of both spiritual as it was physical. It was still not close to Kundun, where the spiritual charm was in full effect, but hey, The Last Temptation of Christ has enough charm and enlightenment to lure anyone for a chance to see a film about Jesus Christ in a more humane form rather than as a caricature. So I guess let's say if I was to give this a score out of 10, I could give The Last Temptation of Christ a 9. That was the only flaw in the story, was only just because of the fact that he put too many big name stars in very small roles. I just don't think there was a need for that. They could have just put, B-list actors into their roles and had their fun in the sun. We just need to point out oh, is that this? Oh, is that David Bowie? Oh, is that Barbara Hershey? Oh, is that Harry Dean Stanton? Say, isn't that the guy who played the Shovel Slayer in Home Alone? Yes, he's had a role. He had a part in that too. There was no need for that. That was the only gripe I had about this movie. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you'd like to leave a comment, go right ahead. Remember, be kind, be courteous, and don't be rude. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Correct Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.